In the quiet town of Kapunda, a brutal crime shattered the peace, leaving a community scarred and demanding justice. This is not just a story of murder. It's a chilling exploration of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of ordinary lives. Let's journey back to the fall of 2010, to Kapunda, South Australia, a town of 3,000 souls nestled in the Barossa Valley. The Rowe family, seemingly ordinary, lived a life that would soon be violently disrupted. Andrew Rowe, born in England in 1965, emigrated to Australia with his parents at the tender age of 3. He grew up in Adelaide, known for his friendly nature, quick wit, and passion for fishing with his father. He was the quintessential good neighbor. Andrew's life intertwined with Rose, a vibrant woman just a year his junior. Their connection sparked during Andrew's studies in Adelaide, leading to a loving marriage in 1985. It was an intimate celebration with loved ones. Their family expanded with the arrival of Christopher in 1987, followed by Chantelle in 1994. Kapunda offered them a seemingly idyllic life. Andrew and Rose established a successful carpet cleaning business, securing their family's financial well-being. By the summer of 2010, Christopher, now 23, had moved out, sharing a home with his girlfriend nearby. 16-year-old Chantelle balanced her studies with a part-time job as a waitress at a local cafe. Chantelle faced a significant challenge, an unexpected pregnancy. With her boyfriend, Dylan, by her side, she resolved to provide her child with the best possible future. Despite her youth, she had unwavering support. Dylan stood firmly by her, offering his love and commitment. Her friends rallied around her, ready to provide encouragement and assistance. The Rowe family, despite challenges, was built on love, hope, and a strong sense of unity. That unity was shattered on the night of November 7, 2010. An intruder invaded their home, committing an act of violence that would forever stain the town's tranquility. The scene inside the Rowe family home resembled a nightmare. Blood splattered across the floors, walls, curtains, and even the ceiling. The brutality was so extreme that even seasoned detectives were shaken. 2 days passed before neighbors, noticing the lack of activity, peered through the windows. The sight they encountered was horrifying. Andrew, 45, and Rose, 44, lay disfigured in the kitchen. Chantelle's body was discovered in her bedroom, violated and broken. Each family member had suffered numerous stab wounds, succumbing to their injuries days before their discovery. The eldest son, Christopher, was vacationing in Queensland with his fiancée when the news broke. Rumors of bodies found on his family's street sent him into a panic. He desperately sought confirmation on Facebook, but communication with his family was impossible. The police delivered the devastating news over the phone, confirming his worst fears. The autopsy results deepened the horror. The total number of stab wounds reached a staggering 112. Andrew had been stabbed 29 times, Rose over 50 times, and Chantelle 33 times. The most disturbing revelation was that Chantelle had been sexually assaulted before her murder. Christopher was overwhelmed by grief and loss. Initially, suspicion fell on him, as he was the only surviving family member. However, his alibi and prompt return home quickly cleared him as a suspect. The question remained: who could commit such a heinous act? The Rowe family was well regarded, with no known enemies. Why would anyone target a pregnant teenager with such violence? Investigators discovered that the killer had calmly changed into clean clothes after the murders and laid down on Chantelle's bed. Bloody drag marks indicated her desperate attempt to escape. Valuables, including phones, a laptop, an expensive camera, and cash, were left untouched, ruling out robbery as a motive. The sheer brutality suggested the involvement of multiple individuals or a single exceptionally strong perpetrator. The suspect had clumsily attempted to clean the crime scene, wiping away footprints in some areas before abandoning the effort. Bloody shoe prints led to the door but abruptly stopped, suggesting the killer removed their shoes to avoid leaving further evidence. There were no signs of forced entry, indicating the family likely knew the killer or that the perpetrator had found an alternate way inside. The confirmation of Chantelle's sexual assault added another layer of depravity to the crime. Rose, the mother, had been stabbed over 50 times, more than Andrew or Chantelle. She had initially survived the attack and attempted to call for help. The killer, realizing she was still alive, returned and brutally silenced her. The police investigated every possible suspect. Finding no enemies or personal issues that could explain the crime, they focused on Chantelle, the 16-year-old daughter. Chantelle and her boyfriend Dylan had been together for a year and were expecting a child. Both were still in school. Dylan, at first glance, seemed incapable of such violence, but the police had to be thorough. Dylan cooperated fully, expressing his devastation over Chantelle's death and their future plans. He had been attending his grandfather's anniversary in a nearby city at the time of the murders, and his alibi was solid. Despite the lack of solid leads, the police had a crucial piece of evidence: the killer's DNA and fingerprints. Seminal fluid extracted from Chantelle's body could identify the murderer. However, a search of the database yielded no match, indicating the perpetrator had no prior criminal record. The murder weapon, knives from the family's own kitchen, suggested an impulsive act of extreme violence rather than a planned attack. Forensic experts estimated the time of death between midnight and 2:00 a.m. A neighbor recalled hearing Rose scream for help around 1:00 a.m., followed by a loud thud, but assumed it was a domestic dispute and did not call the police. No one reported seeing any strangers near the house that night. Officers meticulously searched the area for clues and the missing weapons, hoping for a breakthrough. The police appealed to the public for information. Tips poured in, but most were misleading or false, further frustrating the investigation. The loss of Andrew, Rose, and Chantelle Rowe left a void that can never be filled. Their story serves as a stark warning about the importance of vigilance and the need to confront evil wherever it may lurk. Then Dylan, Chantelle's boyfriend, shared a detail that sent chills down investigators' spines. On Sunday night, Chantelle hadn't been feeling well. She had developed a fever and even called her boss to say she'd be missing work the next morning. At exactly 5 a.m., Dylan sent her a text to check in. His message was marked as read, but there was no reply. He didn't know that by then, Chantelle and her parents were already dead. The person who had read his message wasn't her. It was the killer. This realization cast a dark shadow over the investigation, highlighting the calculated nature of the crime. An even more disturbing twist emerged. Police discovered the murderer had actually tried to respond to Dylan's text, but Chantelle's phone was out of credit. It was a failed attempt to fake her being alive, a chilling act of deception. With this eerie revelation, detectives dug deeper, focusing on Chantelle's circle and anyone with a potential grudge. They stumbled upon Jason Alexander Downey, a 17-year-old who was close with Dylan but barely knew Chantelle. At first, Jason didn't seem like a threat. He was of average height, thin, and appeared harmless. Police initially planned to ask him a few questions and move on, but his behavior took a strange turn as the interview progressed. Instead of answering questions directly, he grew more nervous, raising the detective's suspicions. He complained about not being invited to Chantelle's party and pointed out that everyone else had a partner, even though it wasn't relevant to the case. Then, he suddenly claimed to have an alibi for the night of the murders, a statement no one had even asked for. This erratic behavior only intensified the police's suspicions, prompting them to take his fingerprints and DNA. To their surprise, Jason cooperated calmly, showing little anxiety, something that made them briefly question if their suspicions were wrong. But the truth would soon emerge, shattering any doubts. The experts examined his fingerprints and noticed fresh, deep cuts on Jason's palms. Though he claimed they were from a machine shop accident, the cuts looked too clean and precise, as if made by something sharp. The smoking gun emerged. The fingerprints found on Chantelle's bedroom door matched Jason's. Within just 2 days, the DNA results confirmed what everyone had been dreading. Jason Downey was responsible for the brutal murders. Contrary to what police first assumed, that the killer had to be big and strong to take down 3 adults, Jason was actually thin and looked completely harmless. It was a chilling reminder that you should never judge a book by its cover. He even managed to deceive many people, even those closest to him. When the family's relatives and friends gathered to pay their respects, Jason was seen on local news laying flowers for the family, looking every bit the part of a grieving friend. Born in Kilmarnock, Scotland, Jason had moved to Kapunda with his mother and older brother, Jamie. On the surface, his background seemed normal enough, but beneath it all, there was a dark side to Jason that only he and Chantelle truly knew. As it turns out, Chantelle had always been polite to Jason, but their connection was nothing special. She didn't dislike him, but she didn't really like him either. He was just part of the group, someone she tolerated out of necessity. Jason didn't take rejection well. She had turned down his advances multiple times, but instead of accepting it, Jason's feelings began to morph into something darker, more dangerous. When he found out that Chantelle was pregnant with Dylan's baby, it was like a switch flipped in his mind. The thought of his friend Dylan being the father, not him, sent Jason into a jealousy-fueled rage. That rage came to a head on the night of November 7th. But there's a dark twist to his reasoning. Jason wasn't just angry at Dylan. It wasn't even about him as much as it was about Chantelle. The jealousy and obsession had reached a boiling point, and the night would mark the beginning of something tragic. Jason's twisted infatuation had driven him to the edge of sanity. He claimed that his fingerprints at the Rowe family home weren't from the night of the murders, but from a visit a month and a half earlier. A simple slip-up, right? Except when the police dug deeper, they found that his DNA was on Chantelle's body. Jason tried to play it off, making up an outlandish story that during that same visit, he and Chantelle had been intimate. But here's where his lies fell apart. The forensic evidence proved that the DNA found on Chantelle couldn't have stayed on her body for that long. That lie was just another nail in his coffin. Jason's confession revealed a disturbing series of events that painted a chilling picture of the night. After a heated argument with his mother and stepfather, Jason decided to sleep in his car, but that's when things took a turn. He found out from Dylan that Chantelle was homesick, and suddenly Jason's obsession hit a whole new level. What started as a plan to simply drive by and glance at her house morphed into something far more sinister. Jason parked his car at the end of the street, out of sight, and walked toward the Rowe family home. The house was dark, the windows all closed, but there was one window, the bathroom window, slightly ajar. Being the thin, nimble guy he was, Jason squeezed right through it without hesitation. Once inside, he sat quietly in the bathroom for about 30 minutes, just listening, waiting for the house to settle, ensuring that everyone was asleep. Now, Jason claims his initial plan was to confess his feelings to Chantelle, but let's be real. Why would he grab a kitchen knife before entering her room? Investigators knew right away this wasn't just some awkward confession. Jason had far darker intentions. Police believed that he was going to threaten her, to control her in the twisted way his obsession demanded. When he finally entered Chantelle's room, she resisted his advances. And that's when everything snapped. Her rejection triggered a violent fury in him, and in that moment, Jason didn't hold back. He brutally stabbed her over and over. The screams from Chantelle woke her parents, Andrew and Rose, who rushed to protect their daughter, but Jason, now fully consumed by rage, turned on them as well, stabbing both Andrew and Rose to death in a frenzy. In his confession, Jason claimed he acted out of an uncontrollable passion, but the cold, calculated nature of his actions painted a different picture. This whole picture suggested premeditation rather than a spur-of-the-moment crime. As the investigation progressed, more damning evidence surfaced, further tightening the noose around Jason. A pair of blood-stained shoes were discovered discarded in a deserted area. The blood on them matched the DNA of all three victims, and the prints from the soles matched the bloody footprints found at the crime scene. Inside the shoes, traces of Jason's sweat were also found, implicating him even further. Despite his attempts to cooperate, like promising to show investigators where he had disposed of the knives, the murder weapons were never recovered. This led detectives to believe that Jason was still trying to manipulate the situation, even as the evidence piled up against him. The trial of Jason Downey finally came in the fall of 2011, nearly a year after the murders. Throughout the trial, he remained cold and emotionless, frequently changing his testimony and showing no remorse for his actions. He continued to claim he had no memory of killing the Rowe family, even though his actions told a much darker story. One chilling detail that emerged during the trial was that after the massacre, Jason took Chantelle's pendant and chain, a piece of her he kept even after her death. During the trial, Jason even argued that the tragedy could have been avoided if Chantelle had simply invited him to the party she had hosted before her death. It was clear, though, that his deep feelings of rejection and obsession with her had pushed him to commit this unspeakable act. Throughout the proceedings, Jason maintained a calm, indifferent demeanor. When he finally pleaded guilty, it was an attempt to secure a lighter sentence. He later admitted to his brother that this was his reasoning, to avoid life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Even police were stunned at the sheer savagery of the crime and the killer's attitude. His guilty plea shouldn't be seen as any sign of remorse on his part for three murders that are unrivaled in their cruel and savage nature. On April 19, 2012, Jason Downey was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 35 years. Had he not pleaded guilty, he would have had to serve at least 45 years before even being eligible for parole. He even wrote a letter addressed to Chantelle's family and friends, stating he was sorry and that he deserved whatever punishment came his way. But when you take a closer look at Jason's letter, it's hard to ignore the sense that there's no genuine remorse behind his words. It almost feels like a forced apology, like a boy who was made to write it, rather than someone who truly regrets his actions. Chantelle's brother, Christopher Rowe, who tragically lost his entire family, expressed that while he believed the sentence was just, no punishment could ever heal the pain of losing his loved ones. To honor their memory, Christopher had their names tattooed on his body, a permanent tribute to the family he lost. In one interview, Christopher couldn't even bring himself to speak directly to the press, so he let his cousin speak on his behalf. After the tragedy, he took 6 months off work and left Kapunda, retreating from the world. When he returned, he could barely keep interest in his work. However, he eventually took over his dad's carpet cleaning business, changing the name from First Choice Carpet Cleaning to Rose Choice Carpet Cleaning, a way to keep his family's legacy alive while rebuilding his own life. As for Jason, he remains at the Moreland Juvenile Detention Center in South Australia, still serving his sentence. Was the sentence fair? Should Jason's punishment have been even harsher, or do you think life in prison, knowing he could have the chance for parole in 35 years, is the most fitting way for him to spend his days, living with the constant weight of his actions? Now it's your turn to weigh in on this disturbing case. Share your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Engage with the community and let your voice be heard on this critical issue of justice and accountability. If you found this video insightful and want to support our mission of bringing more cases like this to light, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the darkest corners of the human experience. Thank you once again for watching.